Good morning, sunshines. All right, we finally got to the end of the analysis phase of Crimes of the Heart, yay. So that's due today. Again, in class we'll talk about your individual questions that you might have, or you can email them to me. Hopefully by now you've gotten a good sense of what you're after. Again, it's not necessarily that in a real production, you wouldn't necessarily come up with all these answers yourself, because you would have a design team and other people around to help you discover, dramaturgs, that sort of thing, to help you discover the answers to some of these questions. So you may not have an answer to each individual question, but to the basic questions like how many characters there are, you should have a number. For the basic questions, how many scenes there are, you should have a basic answer to the questions. For conceptualization, again, one of the more difficult sort of aspects of being a director is the line you tread between asserting a concept onto the play and having a concept developed by the group of individuals. We're going to talk a lot about today about communicating with everyone in the production team and developing a concept. So why don't we just start there. Again, if you have any questions, please email me or send me your analysis if you haven't already. But let's just talk about what concept is and style is. Again, the other day we talked about several types of generic styles. Realism, of course, is an attempt to put on stage the world in which is as it appears in the real world, where everything is things you can see, hear, smell, taste, touch, all that sort of thing. You don't have ghosts, you don't have flashbacks. For instance, in Death of a Salesman, where he has a memory of his brother coming in and the brother actually comes to fruition, and you have harken back to 18 years before when they were going to the football game stuff. That is not realism, because that's all happening in his head. But in Fences, which is a play that is very similar to Death of a Salesman, everything in Fences is actually happening in reality. His little daughter is really having a conversation with his son. He is dead, and there's no ghosts, and they don't come back and talk to people. So that's, realism is a style. We talked about naturalism being a more realistic style, in the sense that you, instead of having a fake classroom on stage, you go to the classroom, etc. Again, you have impressionism, which is putting the minimal pieces on stage. It's a minimal approach, but nothing is altered. Whereas expressionism, same concept as far as minimalism is concerned, but in expressionism, you take that object, whatever it may be, a chalkboard, refrigerator, whatever the single object is that represents the whole, and you alter it to make some psychological impression that it might be having on the major character, yes? And then surrealism and Dadaism, again, are out there kind of styles. All those are available to you as a director, no matter how the play was intended to be performed, yes? Shakespeare did not write realistic plays. Hamlet, he got a bunch of ghosts, and Much Ado About Nothing. Much Ado About Nothing is closer to realism. But Midsummer Night's Dream's got donkeys and all kind of crazy stuff. So Shakespeare does not write typically in a realistic style. Crimes of the Heart, I'm going to say, as written on the page, the style of the play is very realistic. It's intended to be done in real time. There's no flashbacks. You don't have any fading away or having ghosts appear. You got somebody who's making real lemonade and drinking real Coke. And again, if your concept is they use the word Coke and she's drinking Dr. Pepper, I think you're not far off from the South that I live in. Those are things that can be up to your interpretation, yes? That's your concept. The style is the way the play was written to be performed. I'm gonna say it's written to be performed realistically, but conceptually you can alter the presentational style as a director and as a design team to use some of these other alternatives that have come up with either before or after, if you feel that it has a greater impact on the way the story is told. Again, what is the story about? What is it trying to tell the audience? Does the environment help support the storyline? Yes, I think you can make a very good argument that Crimes of the Heart can be done in a myriad of styles that will help support the storytelling. Now, let me put this little caveat out there. If you're eating prime rib, if you're eating great steak, you've gone to a great steakhouse, don't use A1. It would be a sin. and everyone there would. If you have a 25-year-old Scotch, don't mix it with Diet Coke. But if you've got J&B, mix away. What that means is if you've got a great play, don't mess with it. Let the great play be the great play. It's easy. You've got a great play that tells a great story and it does it in a well-written manner. Your job may be to stay out the way. If you've got a piece of dog turd, you might want to dress it up. You may need to put some sparklers on it, and have some things that make you not realize that what you're watching isn't all that in a bag of chips. Yes. So depending on how you interpret a play may also depend upon how you perceive the play and its effect on the audience. Again, there are some bad plays out there, trust me. And there's some great plays out there. It is easier to do a great play well, because no matter what you do, it's already still a great play. Now, can you ruin it? Sure. Dousing it in A1 sauce is going to have an effect on the quality of it. It may lessen it, but it's still going to be a pretty darn good steak compared to the most steaks that you have to dump A1 sauce on. Yes. So as you're developing your concept, realize how you're affecting the presentation of the play. Yes. So let's just talk a little bit more about communication with various people you're going to be involved with. Again, the thing that makes theater a very different art form than any other art is the collaborative nature of the theater. In the theater, you're not just you doing a play, unless you're Robert Wilson. In most theater, you're going to have a director who's involved with a stage manager. The stage manager is going to be your right arm. They're going to be the person who carries out your duty, your assignments. The person's going to keep communication open, and eventually, once the show is open, they're the ones going to call your show. Yes, you're going to have a design team, set lighting, costume, props, sound, pyrotechnics, fight directors, fight choreographers, musical directors, choreographers. All these people, they're going to bring their special skills to the benefit of the production. Yes, so while you may have some knowledge in a certain area, these people are experts in that area. So trust them and rely upon their input. Now, how much you rely on it sort of depends on how tied you are to your vision, how much you see this play happening in a certain environment or a certain way or a certain period or a certain style. Yes, but that doesn't mean you should close your mind off, especially early, to other forms of interpretation. Again, there becomes a time, if the best idea ever for a production of Hamlet came to me and the show was already blocked, choreographed, ready to open, and had been teched Wednesday night and open on Thursday night, I would write down the great idea about how to interpret Hamlet, and I would do it next time. But it's too late. The day before the show opens, it's too late to have a great idea. Now, if it's a simple idea, I think I've told you the story about the rock in Galileo that was in Michael Craig's pocket. The second week of the show, he was late on a line, not late, but just wandering for the line, and he realized that he had this little rock in his pocket, and so he gave it to Sam, who had been playing a character that was between the ages of 12 years old, which was funny, and his adult age, and he realizes that Galileo is passing his torch symbolically by handing this thought stone from Galileo to Sam's character. It was perfect, great, easy to add, didn't change anything else. And I wish we had discovered it a week before, because the first week audience didn't get to experience that little piece of perfection as handed in the rock. Yes? So I'm not saying there aren't good ideas that can occur late, but they need to be simple ideas that don't change the entire conceptualization of the whole play. Yes? So one of the things you need to do is develop an understanding. I don't know if you necessarily become designers, but you at least need to understand the words that designers and actors and stage managers are saying. You at least need to understand when they're talking about a style, they may be talking about a period, like instead of, we've been talking about presentational style, they may be talking about an architectural style. They're both styles. There's styles in clothing, there's styles in architecture, there's styles in songs, yes? There's styles in liquor, yes? They may be talking about an architectural style or a period style as opposed to a presentational style, yes? And so when you hear, the problem with those words like that is oftentimes you hear one thing and they're saying another by using the exact same word. So you need to understand a little bit about how each of these individual designers and technicians work, and understand about what the answers are that they need in order to do the work that they need to do. First of all, in the course of a production, it is just natural that the set designer has to come up with their answers first, because a set designer takes a little bit longer to draft, design, and build, because you're creating an actual environment over the course of hopefully several weeks. If you're doing 1 week summer stock, you're doing it over the course of a week. And so if you come in the case of 1 week summer stock, for instance, if you come in as a design team and you haven't had a production meeting where all the elements are designed already, you're late. And you have to play catch up the whole week. And if time is one of the things that you have to budget, again, you've got 3 basic budgets that you can control, time being one of them. The longer the amount of time that you have, the less money it's going to cost you, because you can find the less expensive option. But if you don't have time, you need to have money to help cover up for it. And if you don't have time or money, quality is going to suffer. Yes, you can pick 2. You can have high quality, but you need a lot of money or you need a lot of time. Now, it may also, does it guarantee success? I've been involved in productions, had a lot of money, a lot of time, and still missed the mark because not everyone was on the same page. And the director, and this is something you need to be aware of as a director, you as a director need to be honest with because you're in rehearsals with dancers or musicians or actors, and you're also in production meetings with technicians, with designers, and you're saying one thing to a set of designers and another thing to a set of actors, or allowing the actors to sway your interpretation to a large degree. Yes, now there's alterations that can happen in character that don't change interpretation, but there's also stylistic changes that actors can make that can become too broad or can take it into a different realm that make the whole thing not coalesce, because the design team is doing one thing and the acting team is doing another thing, right? That's when plays fail, is when, and usually you can point right to the director who hasn't had a consistent voice. So one of your jobs as a director is not only to understand the choices that are being made, but to be committed to those choices and then be able to have others to follow your lead. Once the choices are made, once you started down a path of period style, or we're doing this in 1822, or whatever year you're going to set things and whatever style period you're going with, you've got to get everybody to buy into that, because if you suddenly have actors acting like they're in the 1980s, and you've got technicians that are building a show for 1820 and costume designers that are building costume for 1640, things are not going to mesh. Now, magic also happens. Let me put it this way. Hamilton is a rap musical about Alexander Hamilton. And rap music and Alexander Hamilton have nothing to do with one another. So magic can happen, yes. Mixed styles is not necessarily a bad thing, but more often than not, that's something that has to be conceptual even further than having the same period, same style costumes and everything, period styles, et cetera, et cetera. Yes. And so forming ways of communication and understanding other people are very important. First of all, when you like something or when you don't like something, you need to be clear on what it is you like and what it is you don't like. You just can't say, I hate that. What about what you're looking at do you not like? I hate that tells me nothing. It tells me you don't like it for some reason, but it doesn't tell me what about it you don't like. It doesn't mean necessarily that the whole concept is bad or the whole drawing or the whole set is bad. It just may be that it doesn't have this element, or it does have an element that you don't want. So be as clear as you can. What about this drawing, the sketch? Because again, what's going to happen in the design process? You're going to have designers come in with research, hopefully. And again, this is, if you're in a community theater, you may have to be doing a lot more of this stuff. But in a normal situation, you'll have designers, costume designers, lighting designers, come in with what I'm going to call evocative research. It is research that isn't necessarily set in any period or style, but it is an emotional response to the play. Crimes of the Heart is about three sisters, the power of the love of three sisters over the power of the world, yes? And there are just pictures, images of family units, lions, elephants, I don't know, that are out there that say that similar thing. It could be an abstraction. It could just be a whole blob on a painting that people can emotionally say, this gives me the sense that, and when I look at it, that I have when I read this play. Yes? If that's not something that you can understand or relate to, don't just say, okay, respond to the colors, respond to the palette, respond to the treatment, the texture. You can respond to something. If you really don't understand, have the designer defend what it is about the drawing, and if they can hit on keywords, focus on those keywords. Find the commonality in what they're trying to say to you and what you're trying to hear and what you're trying to say back to them. Yes? Find a common ground that then you can build on. You can plant your seeds in this common ground. Another thing is, there are no dumb questions. Because questions, even no matter how stupid you may think the question is, it may lead to a question that's not stupid. So ask, if you don't understand something, be honest. I really don't understand what this painting has to do with anything if you don't understand it. If you do, if you can relate to it, if you have the same emotional, or if you have an opposite emotional response, obviously they're getting something out of this play you're not getting. Please tell me what it is about this play that brings you to this point, yes? So the reason that is where it often begins is because it's safe, because you're not talking about buttons or the color of the clothes necessarily, or the cut of, or how many doors there are, or what kind of cot they have, yes? You're talking about emotional things, emotional reactions. And through the course of talking about the emotional part of the play, you can discover tidbits about the character. Again, not every character, as a matter of fact, should not be the same. It may be that certain characters have one kind of pent up, very striated picture, and other characters are sort of laissez-faire, noodly kind of pictures, etc. It may be that there's a different emotional response to every single character. And one of the things about a play is that plays tend to be about growth or change. Good plays have characters who are not the same at the beginning that they are at the end. And so while you may have an image that gives you the climactic moment of the play, hopefully, again, as a director, the moments you have the most control over, I'm gonna say if you can get 3 moments in the play where everybody is exactly where they need to be. I'm gonna say in Crimes of the Heart, if they're not, you need to design around blowing the candles out on the birthday cake. That needs to be designed. It needs to be the right size table, the right size cake, the right size lighting, because that's the emotional peak of the play. What things look like because of that when they're getting the cards out to play cards, who cares? They're just running around, finding cards in drawers and all that sort of stuff. That's not the climax of the play. The birthday cake is. And again, each section of the play, each beat of the play, should have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and the middle should be the climactic moment. And so if in the course of the play you can find other climactic moments in addition to the climactic moment of the play that you can design artfully, again, have the colors of the costumes come together with the color of the lighting, with the design of the set, you get a good 3 of those, you're doing a darn good job. As a director, telling a story is fantastic. If you have told the story, you have succeeded. If the audience has watched the play and you've told the story and they heard it, great. It's like telling a joke. If you tell the joke and they laugh at the end, it doesn't matter what went in between, you have told the joke. That's great. But at the end of the joke, at the end of the play, to have some memorable moments within it is ideal. And as a director, those are the moments that you can hearken to, that you can build around when things are at their peak and when they're working the best, yes? All right, so they're gonna bring in research, and then they're gonna bring in practical research. This is what a refrigerator in 1950 looked like. This is what molding in the South looks like. This is what people wore, what grandmother's clothes would have been from the 1940s. Again, you can discuss whether you think Lenny is wearing grandma's clothes or not. I think she is. Wearing a dead woman's clothes, they talk about it, right? What the wall material is made out of, if there are walls. Again, that's a style thing, which again can be helpful, I think, in most instances. Having those things around will help to develop the characters that are on stage. Those little clues about what Granddaddy looks like, maybe some pictures on the wall, maybe some just different ways of presenting the play, having an old refrigerator and just, creaky floor, whatever it is. I think those things help, but if you don't, then don't have them. I'm going to show you a little video real quick about how set designers work, and then we'll talk a little bit about set designers, and then we'll go through the various design fields. So enjoy the little video here about set designer and his work.
As a set designer, you will see the design from concept right through to opening night. And you're really the caretaker for that set throughout the whole process. You're the filter visually for everything that happens on that stage. I don't want people to think they need to be architects or builders or have a degree in engineering in order to be a set designer. You don't. You need to have an awareness of space and depth, and you need to be a great storyteller. You need to know how to get people to believe in a space. The process of creating a new set involves lots of collaboration and lots of discussion to begin with. I first approach a brief by talking to the director about how he wants to approach the piece, and then we do lots and lots of research. I look at films, I look at music videos, I look at other people's work, I look at other performances. I research past productions and themes within the piece. I research genre, period, architecture. I go to libraries, I Google, and then I have meetings with the director, and we look at how we want to approach the piece, how we want to approach the design. And eventually, fast forwarding, we start producing a scale model. And the scale model is a tool for us to work out how the performers are going to move and interact in the space. Eventually that model becomes a tool that we send to the builders in order for them to create the set in real life. A set can help to tell the story of an opera or a ballet by either being architecturally naturalistic, so it provides a recognisable backdrop, or it can be poetic and abstract. It can be providing a colour or a mood or a feeling. Essentially, there isn't any difference in how a set can work for opera or ballet or for straight theatre or for an installation. It's really about supporting the artwork that the director is making, and hopefully the atmosphere that you create informs the character as to the world they live in and therefore what kind of person they are. Because if you know the world you live in, you know who you are. If you're interested in a career in set design, a degree is definitely useful, and there are lots of great courses. I trained at Central St Martin's, but I don't think it's essential to have a degree. You've just got to have a lot of exposure to theatre, and the people that I work with on a daily basis come from all different walks of life and have had all sorts of different experiences, and it's those different experiences that create interesting theatre, because everyone brings their own story to the table. So I think as long as you have the basics, you have an understanding of scale and shape and space, I would say you've just got to volunteer in theatre and take every opportunity you can to work in theatre and tell stories. The best advice I can give to somebody designing their own set is to see as much theatre as they can, see as much of other people's work as they can, because the more you see, the more ideas you can feed upon. And ultimately, there's no such thing as a completely original idea. All there is an amalgamation of experiences that you've had that you bring together into one cohesive final scene.
Cool. Now, as a director, what you need to do when you get that information is, first of all, you need to understand the ground plan and what the commitment you're making is. In theater, in the real world, people do things like put desks against walls, put couches against walls. The problem in the theater is you've limited your access around the couch or desk. And so in the theater, we oftentimes, again, this is an example of how realism isn't realistic. Have the couch in the middle of the room, have the table where you can get all the way around it, have furniture just so that you can approach. Again, you've got to have this, the oven's got to open a certain way so that it hits her on the head. She can reach in and then hit her head when she lifts up. It's just there are certain ways that you have to treat the set in order to perform the play that may or may not be the way things actually work in the real world. And so you may have to address those issues about how to perform the play. So be able to read a ground plan, understand, don't just say, oh good, it looks like, you got tables and chairs. How many places do you need to sit? How many places do you need to get on or off stage? If you're doing Crimes of the Heart, and the only way to get on or off stage is through the kitchen door, you have limited your number of ways you can get on or off stage. Hopefully there's a way to get to a stairway to get upstairs. Hopefully there's a way to get through an archway or some way to get to the front door of the house. Again, based upon my grandmother's house, I'm not saying this is your interpretation, but in my version of of Crimes of the Heart, this is the back door. They're coming into the kitchen through the back door. But that's how 90%, 95% of people get into the house. The front door is used by company, yes? But if you have a way to get through the stairway or around the door to get through the stairway, if there's a way to get into Big Daddy's room, then you have different options for people to come from different places and to stage entrances and exits that are more interesting and reasons really technically to get from stage right to stage left. As you're looking at the ground plan, if everything is stage right and you got no reason to move stage left or limited reasons to move stage left, you want the stage to be balanced. That's one of the things, one of the rules of design, of composition, is that over the period of time, not every second has to be balanced, but the play should be balanced. You should have as much action stage right as you do stage left, yes? And so if you have a side of the stage that has very limited access or no reason to go over there, then you've hamstrung yourself in the sense that you're going to have to create justifications for moving over there that may not be motivated by the actor's motions, yes? So be good, don't just say yes because somebody spent some time drafting it. Say yes because everything's in the right place. And again, it's better to say yes early, than say no early because they've spent less time early. It's better to do it at the ground plan stage than it is after they build a model. But it's better to do it at the model stage than doing it when they built it. A bad time to say, oh my God, this would be so great if we can do this here again as opening night. We need to cut a hole in the wall. It costs a lot more money than let's erase this and put a door here. That costs very little money. It may cost some people, some consternation. Why didn't you tell me that before? Well, it didn't occur to me, yes? So that's where you need to be researched and all that sort of stuff. What kind of scene shifts are you agreeing to? How long are the shifts going to take? Are you going to be all vista? Do you have a crew? There's all kinds of things that you can get from ground plans. How the actors interact with their space. One of the rules that I have about directing is that I like to give characters ownership of a certain space. So for instance, I know in All in the Family, Archie Bunker has got a chair. And when George Jefferson first came into that house, I don't know if you remember the episode, you may not even remember All in the Family, but trust me, George Jefferson, I think it's George, isn't it George? Yeah, Mr. Jefferson comes in and he sits in Archie's chair. A black man sits in this white bigot's chair. It's hysterical. There's no dialogue. It's just everybody in the audience knows that's Archie's chair, and this man has walked right in and sat right in it, and Archie is like, he's dumbfounded. He doesn't know how to say, get out of the chair. So, especially the people who are living in the environment, they will have places that they tend to sit at tables. When they have breakfast, there are places you go to sit. Now, if you're in a new environment, Barnett, Lloyd, just comes in and sits down. He may not know he's sitting in somebody's chair. But the other people know where their chair is. They may not have got their name on the back of it, but they have ownership to a space, right? There's ownership to where you stand. My grandmother, when we were in the kitchens of her house, my grandmother's place was to stand in front of the stove. That's where she stood. She would lean against it, she would stand there unless she was doing the dishes, in which case she would go over to and again, there was no dishwasher, she did it by hand. But she would sit there, we would all sit at the table, having breakfast, and she would eat her breakfast while standing at the stove. That's just where I always remember her being. I don't remember her having a chair. Yes, and so Lenny, for instance, may not physically have a chair in this room. So again, you can think about things like that. Who owns what? Because one of those places is Granddaddy's chair. Just think of it that way. One of those chairs at that table is where Granddaddy sits. Which one is it? And again, is it too confusing to tell the story and do that to yourself? Or does it help augment a little bit more, show a little depth? That's your choice. I'm not saying one's right, one's wrong. It's just something that I like to do, is give ownership of a territory in the play so that each character has their space that they feel comfortable in. Yes, and again, it just provides a little, it's home base. It's very, I mean, you've been watching enough of these videos. This is where I stand. Cody sits right here. Every time we come in here, we could move anywhere we want to, but this is where we go. Because that's what we've established as our ownership of where we go. Yes, and the lighting is also good here. Yes. All right. Those are the things that a set designer is trying to figure out when they're approaching things. Again, here's a little video on costume designer, what their approach to things.
This might have a little more pizzazz.
My name is Emilio Sosa, and I am a costume designer. A costume designer is responsible for the look of the show, and that incorporates everything from the hair, shoes, makeup, and clothing that the actor wears throughout the show. There's no typical day in the life of a costume designer because every day is different depending on what you're doing. Some days are fitting days, which is when we are fitting the actors in the clothing. Some days are shopping days when I'm shopping for the clothing. And some days are just research days. As a costume designer, I do not work alone. I have an assistant. Then we have our tailors, you have sewers, you have artisans. I think the most important skills that you need to be successful as a costume designer is you have to have the art of collaboration. Because like I said, you don't work alone. You're always working with a team. You have a director who has a vision, and our job as a costume designer is to support that vision. You need to be able to like research, because depending if it's a period piece or if it's a current piece, you have to be able to research. Also, you have to be able to handle deadlines and not stress out, because it's a very stressful environment, but you always have to be cool under pressure. And I think that's the most important, attribute, is not to let the job overwhelm you. I have a fashion degree. I studied fashion design in New York at Pratt Institute. So most importantly, I think for anyone in this industry, you have to really figure out how things are made. The fabric you choose is dependent on the design. Not every fabric does the same thing, so you have to have a knowledge of fabrics. One summer, I needed a summer job, and I had a teacher who taught a costume history course who knew of a company that was looking for what we call in the theater a shopper. You shop for threads, fabrics, notions, whatever you need to create a costume, that's what the shopper buys. I was 21 years old. I had never really known anything about theater. And so I always say theater chose me, I didn't choose it. But it's been over 25 years and it's been an amazing journey. So my first big job was Top Dog Underdog under George C. Wolfe. And that was the show that brought me here to Center Theater Group for the first time many, many years ago. I've been fortunate because I love coming here. I did Porgy and Bess, Immediate Family, Father Comes Home from the War, Part 1, 2, and 3, and now Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. So I will always say, go to school, learn how clothing is made, and then go into the business. Because at the end of the day, you're making clothing for people.
Hopefully enlightening. First of all, it's short, that's good. You want to make sure that you understand, this will go back to scenery as well, but understand sketches and renderings. I'll use good. Just because it's a pretty sketch or a pretty rendering doesn't mean it's right. So sometimes it's hard, and it's very hard to separate the fact that it looks great. Man, this looks great, from the fact that what you're agreeing to is that there's a table staged right and 3 chairs around it and a refrigerator staged left, right? So you need to get past the prettiness of it to the practicalness of it, to the lace. Don't worry about the fact that it's gorgeous colors and it's all painted correctly and the hair is in the right place, et cetera, et cetera. What does this tell me about the character? Are the choices that are being made appropriate, not just pretty for the picture? Yes? Now, having said it from the positive point of view, it is also true from the negative point of view. And this is harder, when you're looking at a sketch or a rendering, and the skills of the designer may not be towards drawing, because again, there's a lot of skills in design. You got to draft as a set designer, you've got to be able to build costumes, there's all kind of things about designing that you might be good at. Drawing may not be one of them. And so when you're looking at a sketch of somebody who is not as developed an artist as others may be, you still have to look towards what is being put onto the person, onto the actor. And again, say, is this a knee-length skirt, or did you just draw it misproportionate? Yes? Are these laced boots, or did you just not draw closures on your boots? Don't assume, just ask questions, right? As best you can to make sure you have the right answers. So just go through, make sure you can understand and what you're saying yes to as you're looking through renderings, that sort of stuff. One of the important things about costumes, we are all very comfortable in the clothes that we wear. I have two styles, and you've seen them in the course of the videos. I have my sweater vest, thank you very much, elegant. That's my winter wear. And then I have my summer wear, which are Hawaiian shirts. Those are my styles. I feel comfortable in those. If I were to have to wear a suit and tie as a person, I would not feel as comfortable. Now, having said that, if I was playing a character in a play, or if I had an actor who was playing a character in a play who had to wear a suit every day, that character would be comfortable in that suit if they wore it every day. And so it may be that even though I'm not saying you have to have them wear the exact suit by any means, having them wear a suit and tie, having them wear the right shoes. We are so used to in the modern world of wearing flip-flops. I promise you nobody's gonna have flip-flops on in the show. Having them wear hard sole shoes, if that's what the character's gonna wear, get that on their feet as soon as you can, because you just walk differently. You stand differently. You have to be comfortable in that, or else you look uncomfortable on stage. Yes? Now, if the point is you're doing My Fair Lady and Eliza Doolittle is supposed to be uncomfortable in those clothes, then wait till opening night. Have her be, because she will look uncomfortable in those clothes because she won't have known how to wear them. Yes? But most people, most characters should look comfortable in their own clothes. And so having them wear rehearsal skirts, having them wear corsets, having them wear collars, if you're doing a Chekhov with the ties and the stiff collars. Whatever it is, knickers, if you're going back that period of time. Yes, togas, if you're going back to the Greeks and Romans. Yes, so have actors get as close to they can. Again, I wouldn't put the burden on the costume shop to have the costumes ready that early, but the costume shop's going to have rehearsal skirts. They're going to have shoes that are similar, although maybe not the exact shoes you're going to wear, but they're going to have some hard sole shoes, size 8 shoes that you're going to be able to fit somebody in, so they can wear those as opposed to wearing tennis shoes or flip-flops in rehearsal. Now, do they need to be there for the read-through? No. But if you're wearing cufflinks and ties and tails, it might not hurt to have it in a read-through, because you'll be able to see how restricted your voice is, or how free you are. Yes, if you're doing Let the Sunshine In and dance around like a hippie, if you're used to wearing a suit and tie, it may be that you're full and fancy free. You just have different movements. You sit different. You act different because you are different, because your character is wearing different things. Yes, so shoes, rehearsal skirts, all those sort of things. And how they move normally in their day. Cool. As a director, those are things that you can work with, and as you're watching the costume designer work. All right, here's a little bit about lighting.
Welcome to Behind the Emerald Curtain. I'm Lindsay Northen.
And I'm Sean McCourt. Today we put a spotlight on the lighting of Wicked.
The lighting designers collaborate with the creative team to create an artistic and technical process that turned their initial ideas into a beautiful production.
The lighting design for Wicked is sort of really based off of old school craft and technology, and then really specifically focused on the storytelling, telling the audience exactly where to look. You know, one of the ways I sort of did this with Wicked is sort of came up with this notion of viewing this world, this Ozian world, maybe through a crystal ball, or maybe through looking down into a jeweler's display cabinet and seeing these two beautiful gems, these two beautiful characters. And just knowing that the light had to emanate from the story that they were telling. After I've got these ideas in my head, you take all that information and you begin to distill it down into how can I achieve these ideas with lighting effects, or develop a light plot so I can have the flexibility in the theater to give a director or a choreographer anything they might need to help create their composition. The light plot is really sort of nothing more than really an architect's drawing.
The lighting plot is the physical representation of where the lights hang in space.
So if it's my job to design the lighting for the show, it's another person's job to implement and technically engineer the lighting for the show. And that fell to Brendan Quigley, our head electrician, and the original production electrician on the show, Bob Fairback.
Some details about a light plot. There are multiple plates, so multiple drawings of Ken's design. So one plate could be just the overhead electrics, for example. And all of those plates have some specific information that we need, including the position, the type of lighting fixture, the gel color that goes in front of it, and just some numbers. We have approximately 650 lighting fixtures with a focus node attached, which means we have to know where it goes.
Basically, once the light plot is in the air, all the light plot does from that point on is become a record of where everything lives. But, for example, when we go to another venue, we use that light plot as a base to then develop the next show.
When the London production was put together, it was the first time that the entire original creative team came together again for the mounting of a new production. Some of the things that they discovered during that process were new to Wicked. The set was outfitted with a green LED array, which looked terrific, and our producers and creative team liked it so much that we decided we wanted to bring it back to the other companies.
So these green LEDs that you see in all the portals, they weren't original to this particular set. But that's the great thing about working on a Wicked is we can continue to reinvent certain parts of it, which is really wonderful, and just continue to enhance the audience's experience. To be part of Wicked is really, for me, I'm sure it will be a once-in-a-lifetime experience. I think what I love most about Wicked is watching the audience, and you get this thunderous applause. The first time that happened in San Francisco, I was literally like blown away. As a theater artist, that's what we do. That's the payoff.
Again, of the design elements, I'm going to say lighting is the most esoteric. I once had a director, he came to me and said, could this be bluer? And so in the headset I said, can I have channels 2, 5, and 8 at full? And I said, or at 80, I think is what I said. At 80, and it got bluer. And he said, how does that happen? That I say blue and you say 2, 5, and 8 at 80? I said, well, those are my channels where blue are. Lighting designers have cryptic messages the way that they work. Talking about mood is a very good thing with lighting designer. Talking about tempos is going to be driven more by lights than any other thing. The speed of the transitions, the speed of the play. Just in general, as a director, you need to know that comedies need to be faster. Comedies need to be at a rapid pace, especially if they're farces, because in comedies there are things that that just don't make sense, that somebody would let happen unless the timing is quick enough that nobody has time to think about it. Yes? Now, I'm not saying tragedy needs to drag by any means. One of the things that I preach to my actors is you have to earn your pauses. Every moment on stage could be the most dramatic moment. There seldom are. They may be, if that actor has one line, and it's a pizza boy, and you deliver the pizza, and your pizza is ready. Bow chicka wow wow. All right, you're just pizza boy. Pizza's ready. Here you go. $5. Thanks. Whatever. Get out of here. This the scene means nothing, right? It's just we got to get the food somehow for the scene, and there it is, right? So a lot of characters are utilitarian. As long as the audience understands the utility they're serving, great, get them on, get them off, get them out, yes? But then when you get to the moment that is important, if the door's open and suddenly the young ingenue falls in love with the pizza boy, then you can have the heartbeat that happens. Here's your pizza. La, da, da, da. But you have to earn that pause. You have to earn your pause. You have to earn the way the tempo works, yes? And so as a director, understanding how to score a script, how to talk to a lighting designer, even though they're going to be speaking some strange foreign tongue about numbers and you mean colors, all that sort of stuff is important to know, yes? What specific effects do you need? Be very as close as you can, because obviously, if you're going to, let's just say you need fire, you're not going to have fire on stage, more than likely. You're going to have things that look like they're fire on stage, but they're going to be little pieces of cloth that are waving in light, or little spittles of water that have light shone on them. Anything other than fire, because fire, if it goes the wrong place, can burn the theater down. But there are a lot of ways that we have come up with over time to represent fire, yes? And so whatever the effect is that you feel you need, again, the lighting designer is more often than not the person in the, and again, I'm not saying the set designer doesn't have anything to do with it, especially if you've got some sort of thing like tessitura in Gypsy, the costume designer may have something to do with it, but for the most part, it's the lighting designer who's going to have to give the electricity to make the thing work ultimately. So be as specific as you can about what you want the effect to be, and hopefully the team will be able to come up with an effect that makes you happy with what the reality of it is. Again, you want to talk about the practicals, whatever you may need as far as practicals, as far as lamps or things that set the time of day. If you've got a scene that happens at night, having lamps on stage to turn on, make it easy to say night, that sort of thing. Having little gobos that flush out the edges of things are nice. All right, this is a whole class down into one paragraph, but here's a little video about working with actors.
I don't know who said it, but someone once said that a film is 80% casting. So I think you have to cast a film right. And that means casting a film right means you know your character and the person that's going to play that character is right and knows and can explore that character and bring themselves to it, but also take it elsewhere. So when I work with, there's many different ways of working with an actor. My thing is to always ask them how they like to work, because some actors want a lot of information. They'd like to see all your research. Other actors don't. So I wouldn't impose a working methodology on an actor. I definitely try and work within the realm of what makes them really comfortable, because that way you'll get the best that they can do and the best that they are. But it really does help to cast great actors like Patricia Clarkson, Toby Jones, Jackie Weaver, James Caan. I mean, that is a gift, but you still want to make them feel very comfortable. So for me, it's to minimize what goes on around a film set and make it all about them. That's very important, that they are the front line of a film, so you want to make them feel special, and that the technology around it can disappear somehow, and they are in a room being the real people.
Short and sweet. One of the things you want to do with actors, the biggest thing you have to do with actors is develop a trust. For they trust that the things you're telling them are true, and you can trust them to do the work that they need to do. I encourage my actors to do their own research, to do their own development, bring things to the table, because I can't know everything. And your life experience is just as valuable as my life experience. Your grandmother and where she stood is just as valuable as where my grandmother stood. Bring in gestures, bring in attitudes, bring in voices, bring in whatever it is you can bring in, and allow me as a director to edit. If I have to keep spoon feeding you the answers, it's going to be hard for everybody to be different, or as different as they may need to be on stage. If you can bring, as an actor, your own history, your own background, and allow me to make it, edit it, and make it fit into the whole frame, that's what I would prefer. But that takes trust, yes? And so that's something you, especially if you've never worked with a person before, figuring out where the limits are as far as experimentation is concerned. And what I mean by that is, early on in rehearsal, bring me everything. bring me everything. The day before you open, stop bringing me stuff. The time to experiment is gone because we have to settle on how we're telling the story. Some of the worst mistakes that have happened in plays that I have done are when actors continue to experiment after the tech week into opening and change character and character development after the opening because everybody else is playing, you know, the concerto in B minor. Suddenly you're in rap music land or whatever, and things it just fell apart. So everybody needs to be, again, you need to have a clamp on those things and let the actors know, now is not the time, you're done. Everything is in concrete, as they say. So you need to set things, and if you have actors that refuse to do that, replace them, right? Actors need to learn very early on, there's 20 of them for every one, and if you're a female, 100 of you. You are replaceable, and people don't put up with crap like that. So set your performance, be trusting, trust your other actors. The biggest step, just to let you know, we'll talk about this many more times, but having the actor put the book down to get off book is a huge step for an actor. And it can be embarrassing. You need to have a rehearsal that is comforting, that allows for mistakes, that understands that people don't like to be embarrassed. And so providing that little comfortable environment where they're willing and able to, it may just be that you have run-throughs with just the two characters who are having to figure out how to kiss one another without the rest of the cast there. I prefer to have my rehearsals open because, again, I'm in an environment where we're teaching. And so having other actors learn to go through or see somebody go through that experience, I think can be valuable. But if it hurts the production and you need to have a separate rehearsal where just people learn how to fight, then it'd be kissing, it could be fighting, it could be anything. Where they can embarrass themselves would maybe be advantageous. But getting off book is a big jump. And it may be that you just have a couple rehearsals where it's just stage managers. Don't do the blocking. We'll get down to the blocking later, which is the biggest hurdle we have right now is to get the lines learned. And especially when you're doing something like Shakespeare or, God forbid, a Greek play, the way the words are on the page just are not the way we speak normally. And so finding those patterns can take time. Yes, so having to work off book. Again, one of the things that actors have are different training regimens they've gone under. So you sort of need to understand a lot of times where they're coming from as far as what their training is and what they need to support their performance because that's the way they've been taught to be good. Yes? All right, stage manager. Essential element of the play, very seldom talked about, but here's a little bit about stage managing.
A stage manager is strictly there to facilitate, supervise, and to make other people's visions come true. You're making sure that the play is happening when it's supposed to be happening, that everyone that's involved with the show and the play knows what they're doing. So in pre-production, the stage manager's job a lot of times is just pumping out a lot of paperwork. Making schedules, printing out the schedule, the script, scene breakdowns. Inside the rehearsal room, you generally have your actors, your stage management team, your director, and his or her team. And then outside of the rehearsal room, you have a whole army of people working to put this production on.
Hey Stan, hey Scott, how are y'all today?
People that build the sets, the people that build the costumes, the people that are physically hanging the lights, the people that are testing and running the sound cables. And so the stage management really is the key to letting everyone know and be on the same page as far as information.
Another Wednesday, another show, right?
So in the rehearsal room, the director is very much in charge and the stage manager is there to help facilitate and keep that room on track. And then once you move into the theater, that kind of shifts. And it's the stage manager who is helping making sure everything's happening at the right time. So you're putting in the light cues, you know, and then you also are having the actors. And the actors are like, oh, so where am I supposed to be?
Places?
So basically you kind of play the parent and you just make sure everyone's doing their right job. Then you move into previews. It's a great process for whenever you start to invite an audience into the space, into the theater. You finally have a live audience to bounce and feel their energy and just feel how that changes things. And then once you open, that'd kind of be the next phase in the play's process or journey. Then at that moment, It's nothing supposed to be changed.
Go.
From that moment on, that is the show. These are the lights, these are the levels, this is the set, that is the costume piece you're gonna have. The play's frozen.
All right, kitchen and reset.
It's your job then to make sure that the director's vision is being maintained. In college, I discovered stage management, and I kind of just fell into it. I like things to be in their row. Everything has its place in my apartment, in my life, and I'm always on time. You know, I'm just kind of, I guess I'm that type. I'm that person. And so stage management just kind of came naturally, because stage management's about making schedules and adhering to those schedules. And because if you don't adhere to them, then everything else backtracks, and it's money. Time is money. I found theater young, and it was always my dream to be in it in some way, shape, or form. And here I am, I'm 25, and I'm in it. I love it. I love what I do. And I've been very fortunate. I won't lie, especially theater. A lot of it is about who you know and when you know them. Your talent and skill get you to the table, but then everything else is fate. And I've been very lucky to be so fortunate in my fate. Well, I've had some great cards thrown my way.
All right, stage managers are your right hand. They are the person who's going to run the show, going to deal with any problems that come up, especially once you're out of the picture. If the way things work, if they're working right, is the first rehearsal you are completely in charge, and by the time you get to opening night, you have nothing to do. And it's all in the hands of the stage manager, right? They're the ones that run the show. They're the ones that keep communication avenues open. They shouldn't be involved in any choice that is made, but they should be knowledgeable about why the choices were made. Because if there's having to be an understudy or a replacement, typically they're the ones that are around to still be there if something gets broken and you can't find a replacement. They're the ones that need to know why you chose that coffee cup. And if a new coffee cup matters or if it doesn't, right? If a coffee cup's a coffee cup, great. But if you chose a particular coffee cup because of the shape or style or what it says about, you know, mama, so they need to know that so they know what's important so that they can find something similar that has the same impact. Yes? So the stage manager is a very important person in your relations in the course of doing a play. Each rehearsal needs to have a clear and obvious objective. Today we're blocking. Do not give character analysis in a blocking rehearsal. It's just unclear. If you start giving character analysis in a blocking rehearsal, people will be confused. Why are we talking about character? This is a blocking rehearsal. In a tech rehearsal, don't give blocking notes. Now, if things come to a hedge and people, you know, are in the wrong place, all right, you may need to change the blocking, but that's because of the tech rehearsal, not because you decided you need to redo a scene. Yes? You need to have clear objectives, keep in mind those objectives, and that'll make things be clear. If you start muddling things up, then people are going to be muddled. And once you start going down that path, man, rue the day. Again, once you start tearing things apart to find an answer for something that's small, you may wind up causing the entire cliff to fall down by taking the tree out that you didn't like. Yes? So be careful. If it's a small little point that annoys you, it may be better than having the whole play crash and burn. Yes? And again, if you've done the tech rehearsal problem well enough, there may be still time to fix those little things once you've gotten to the other side of the mountain as well. Improvisation, one of the things about directing, there are those who love improvisation and there are those who are not big fans of it. A lot of times it depends on the play for me. If a play is new and fresh and full of opportunities, why not? Give it a shot. If the play is, Crimes of the Heart is pretty understandable, I don't know if there's a lot of room to improvise, although there might be, especially if you're ahead. If you finish a half hour early, give them a chance. Let's see what happens. We might find some freshness. It may just be a game that everybody gets to laugh at. And by that, you can switch characters, have Lenny play Babe for some reason, etc., just to give some lightness to it, to give people a breath, to have them understand what the other characters are going through when they miss their line, etc., when they miss their blocking. Yes? And so there's improvisation is one of those things where I know directors that work totally improvisational. They never have any kind of set blocking. I find that it leads to muddy shows, personally. Are they fresh? Sure. But then there's something to be said for fresh. But there's also something to be said for well-planned. And those two things tend to be at odds. Yes, it's hard to have a well-planned performance when everybody's doing whatever they want. Yes. And so having an end to it, or at least a time for it, can be helpful. All right, I'm gonna give you the 7 steps in the performance production process. These are the steps that sort of are gonna happen come hell or high water. The first step is commitment. You get a call, you gotta say yes to the contract. There is no better time. As a matter of fact, I'm going to tell you, there's no time other than the commitment phase to say no. In theater, yes to a project typically is 6 weeks or so. It could be a couple of weeks longer, maybe 3 months for a summer gig, etc. It's not like you're making a life decision. And there are times, if somebody is sexually harassing you, get out. If somebody's physically abusing you, get out. There are reasons to leave. But there's no better time to know that than the beginning, yes? Now, when I was your age, I was told by my professors to say yes to everything, and I'm gonna tell you the same thing. Early on in your career, say yes to everything. Say yes to going to Tweet Seed. Say yes to doing this. You'll meet people who are gonna be around for the next 40 years of your life. And if you survive the summer with them, then you got great stories with them, no matter how good or bad the productions were. You're gonna meet people, and those people become your network. Yes, so say yes to everything. I learned later on, when I got a little older and got a little tired of doing summer stock, that if you say no, sometimes it doesn't mean no, it just means not for that amount of money. And so sometimes no is just I haven't gotten there yet. And suddenly when they double your salary, or give you other opportunities you hadn't had before you said no, it can be a negotiating tool before you get to yes. But the commitment phase is when you've been offered the job. Yes. The first thing you're gonna do is your analysis phase. You're gonna read the play. First thing, read the play and figure out what it is about the play that you don't know. And then your research phase is when you find the answers to the questions you don't know. Yes, so that's commitment. You've decided the job. Analysis, you've read the play. You've gone through and figured out what it is that you don't know. Research, you've gone through and figured out the answers to the questions that you were unsure of. And this is true of designers, technicians, actors, everyone, directors. And then you get to the point where it's called the incubation phase. The incubation phase is when you have a time to sit down and you're not doing any research. You're not really even thinking about the play. You're doing the rest of your life. And as you look back on the play, especially as a director, when you're just trying to remember what the play was about a week later after you've read it or something, the moments you can remember are the highlights to you. That's when the play worked for you, right? Those are the climactic moments for you. Now, it may not be the same climactic moments that other designers and technicians, everybody else has, but those are the points that you remember a week later, a month later. Those are the points that had an impact on you and become the way you tell the story. The incubation phase, again, in 1 week summer stock is a lot shorter than it is if you're doing a 6-month show at the Alabama Shakespeare Festival. You may have a lot longer to incubate on things. But once you get to the other side of the incubation phase, you have the selection phase where you choose what the path you're going to follow, right? And then again, once you have made that selection, as my grandfather says, it's like going from chicken to pig. The chicken contributes to the breakfast, you get an egg every day, but you have to slaughter the pig. The pig is committed to that breakfast. So once you have gone from the selection to the implementation, you have killed the pig. And so once you start implementing things, you start costing you money. And anytime you go back and research and reanalyze and recommit to something, you are costing yourself money because you are changing the way the selection had been to a new, different selection. So implementation is where it starts costing you money. But then again, if you get to a certain point where you realize it's not working, then maybe time to fix it. It may be time just to throw some green paint on it. Whatever. Add some razzle dazzle. Cut scenes. And there's nothing wrong with saying, you know what? This play is better without the Singing in the Rain scene. I know it's called Singing in the Rain, but the rain ain't working. Who's gonna notice? Well, the audience will notice. But if the play doesn't work with it, maybe it's better without it. Just a suggestion. And then the last step is the evaluation phase, where you go through and look at what the choices you made. Oftentimes, as you're going through the evaluation phase, it is easy to see where things failed. It is often very difficult, if things work, to find exactly what it is about that process that worked. Maybe it's the people, maybe it's the play, Maybe it's the directing you didn't do as opposed to the directing you did do. So success is hard to replicate. Failure is very easy, and so you can maybe fail in a different way next time. But those are the 7 steps in the production process. Cool. All right, so next time we're going to go back into actually figuring out how to come up with the concept, and we'll see you then.